Hi, this is Kristen, and I wanted to create a video to help you write a paper. When I read through your Session 3 assignments, it seemed like people struggled a little bit with how to write a thesis statement, how that thesis statement connected with the rest of the paragraphs, and then how to write a conclusion. So this little video is designed to help you in a visual way understand how all the elements of a paper work together. First of all, your introduction is really giving the context for your paper. So if you think about the introduction as being the place where you describe what the big picture looks like, and you describe all the elements that are related to your thesis statement really describes the little piece of the big picture that you're going to talk about in your paper. So for instance, if the big picture is worldviews, and your thesis statement would therefore be about the little piece of worldviews that you're going to talk about. Or for instance, if you're going to write a paper about short-haired cats, your introduction would first talk about all the different types of cats and then help you to focus in on your thesis statement about short-haired cats. To put it in a different picture, your introduction goes from big to small. So you talk about the big picture in the first couple of sentences of your introduction. You maybe use an interesting quotation or statistic to help frame or help the reader understand the context of the big picture, and you make the reader interested. And then your very last sentence of your introduction is your thesis statement. And that's the bold proclamation about what your paper is going to be about and how it all fits into that big picture that you've just talked about. So here's a sample thesis statement. A worldview is composed of beliefs about God, assumptions about how the world works, and personal experiences. And I've made those three parts in different colors so that you can see clearly how the supporting paragraphs work together with that thesis statement. So the first statement of the thesis statement is a worldview is composed of beliefs about God. A bad thesis statement would be one that's very general, that doesn't make a bold statement, that can't be defended or argued, that's vague or non-committal. So for instance, it seems a lot of people have a worldview is not a very good thesis statement because it's hard to argue with that. Everybody has a worldview, and it seems a lot of people is really vague and not very committal. Going back to our thesis statement, a worldview is composed of beliefs about God, assumptions about how the world works, and personal experiences. You can see then that your three supporting paragraphs are each built around those 3 points in your thesis statement. So your first supporting paragraph will be about beliefs about God. Your second supporting paragraph will be about assumptions about how the world works. And your third supporting paragraph will be about personal experiences. Each supporting paragraph should have the same 6 or 8 sentences. And those sentences are here. So you need to have your very first sentence of your paragraph should be your topic sentence with one main point. And that's the one point that you're going to talk about in that paragraph. So your topic sentence for the first supporting paragraph will be something about beliefs about God. Then you'll have an explanation of that topic sentence. Then you'll have a quotation, fact, or paraphrase from a textbook to help support your idea. You don't want to provide a paragraph that doesn't have any support. You've got to be able to justify your statements and give validity to your statements. So anytime that I'm grading a paper, if I go through the supporting paragraphs and I don't see any parentheses, that's a red flag to me that you haven't used any of your sources from your textbook or your other course materials to support your statements. And if I don't see parentheses in the supporting paragraphs, I know already that your paper has some problems. You need a sentence or two about what does this mean? Why is this worldview piece important? And then you need, lastly, a transition statement to the next idea. So you're summarizing worldviews, personal worldviews, and you're giving the reader a sample of the next idea. Your second supporting paragraph will have, again, all those elements, one main point, an explanation, a quotation, a sentence about what it means, another sentence about why it's important, and then a transition statement to the next idea. But this supporting paragraph will be about your second point. And lastly, the third supporting paragraph, again, has all those same aspects or those same elements, so that your paragraphs are really fairly formulaic. Actually, writing a whole paper is fairly formulaic. And as I'm reading papers, I'm looking for these basic elements to be there. If they're not there, it makes it harder for me, the reader, to grade it. It makes it harder for me to understand it. I'm looking for a certain rhythm or flow to a paper, and if that rhythm or flow isn't there, it makes it harder for me to understand what you're trying to say to me, and it makes it harder for me to understand your points if they're not adequately developed or justified. And then we get to the conclusion. And the conclusion, again, reminds the reader how this paper fits in with the context of the big picture. So again, why is this important? You're summarizing all of your points, you're telling the reader what was the point of your paper, but you're also telling the reader again, why is this important? So you can see from this picture, this is what your final paper should look like. You can see the connection between all of them. At the base of that top pyramid should be your thesis statement, and your 3 supporting paragraphs support that thesis statement. And then, once you're done with your supporting paragraphs, you come back out into the big picture and you again describe the context for your paper. So what does this look like in an outline? I know some people were struggling with their outlines. Your Roman numeral 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and I didn't go all the way through on this outline, but your Roman numeral should represent one paragraph. Okay? Then the capital letters represent the main points that you want to make. Or if you wanted to go back to the formula that I gave you for supporting paragraphs, you could make letter A be topic sentence, whatever your topic sentence is going to be for that paragraph. Letter B would be your explanation of that topic sentence, whatever that explanation is going to be. Letter C would be the quotation, for instance. So your outline really does mirror exactly the formula that I've described in the previous slides. So what if you need more than 5 paragraphs? I've explained to you how to write a 5-paragraph paper, but what if you need more than 5 paragraphs? Maybe it's a 5 to 7 page paper, and if each paragraph is only supposed to be 6 to 8 sentences, you're going to need a lot more than 5 paragraphs. This formula works regardless of how many pages your assignment has to be. You just need to cover, so for instance, rather than having one supporting paragraph to support a main idea, you could have 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 supporting paragraphs. But the formula is still the same. Each paragraph needs one main idea in the topic sentence. It needs support, it needs explanation, and it needs to tell the reader why it's important and why it's significant. What should you remember about APA? I know people are kind of confused about that. I want to make it as simple as possible. Make sure you have 1-inch margins, that your font is correct, that you're doing the in-text citations correctly, that you have a references page, and that you have a title page. The running head and all the other stuff I'm not as concerned about, but these 5 points are critical. And as we get closer to the end of the class, I'm going to grade harder and harder on those 5 points. What should we remember about academic writing? First of all, you should avoid using contractions. Can't, won't, didn't, haven't. Although the APA manual does not specifically prohibit the use of contractions, most of your professors are going to ding you on contractions because it's considered sloppy writing, and it's certainly not desirable in academic writing. And so even though the APA manual doesn't specifically forbid it, I'm going to give you a little heads up and just warn you that the majority of your faculty members are still going to hold you accountable for that because it's still considered sloppy writing. Avoid using first person, so never refer to yourself as I or me or my, unless the assignment prompt specifically requires it. And lastly, it's easy to plagiarize when you are tired, so make sure you're writing your references page as you write, or even better, if you know exactly what resources you're going to use in your paper, write your references page first. I remember one time in my doctoral program, I was really tired. I submitted the assignment 10 minutes before it was due at midnight, and the next day the professor emailed me and said I could fail you for this paper because you forgot to put your references page on. Fortunately, he was gracious because that was a very, very big assignment, but I was tired and I'd had just about enough of that assignment, and I submitted it and didn't double check it first, and I didn't have a references page. He could have very easily given me a 0 on that assignment, and your professors here at CCU will give you a 0 on an assignment if you forget to do a references page. Why is your references page important? Because that's how you give credit to the person who did the work on that article, on that textbook, on that video, whatever you're sourcing, whatever you're referencing. Someone else did a lot of work on that, and they should get proper credit. And part of academic integrity at CCU is making sure that you're not plagiarizing. You need to give credit where it's due. What are the most common problems that I see in papers? First of all, students don't have a thesis statement. Their papers lack organization, in large part because their paragraphs are incomplete and they're not following the formula. Paragraphs are incomplete, and quite often that's because the students didn't support their statements. They didn't explain why their point was important or significant, or they didn't answer all the questions in the assignment prompt. That's a really common problem. You get all excited about the first part of the question and you know how to answer that, and you forget to go back and look at the second part of the question and make sure you're writing to that as well. And lastly, spelling, grammar, and APA are really common, and they're a really easy way to lose points. So if your word processor gives you the little green squiggly lines under a word, don't ignore those. That means that there's a problem in that sentence and you need to fix it. That's a really easy way to get points back too, is to make sure that your assignment has proper spelling, grammar, and APA.